So, welcome to our StuSuite webinar. My name is Joel Stoner. I am the founder and CEO of Alter Media. And today we're going to talk about the 7 things you must do when you first get Studio Suite. First, couple of housekeeping things. This will be about 90 minutes, and we are going to take a 5-minute break about halfway through. So, if you have to go, hold it till then. We are recording this, and it'll be posted to our site probably in about a week or two. It takes us some time to clean up all of my mistakes and then post it. And we're going to be doing webinars most Thursdays. There's a schedule up on our website. If you click the webinars button at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a calendar there, and you can grab the links and register yourself if you don't get an email. And any questions that you have, just type them in, and if I can, I'll answer them in line, and if not, I will answer them at the end. And this is not intended to be a sales-oriented demo showing the whole scope of Studio Suite. Rather, it is a quick start guide on how to create initial setup data. We are assuming that you have FileMaker and Studio Suite X installed, either the trial version or the purchased version. You've got it registered and that you are logged in. We are going to be creating the foundational building blocks for business productivity in Studio Suite. That sounds awful official. We're going to tell Studio Suite about 7 things. Your company, your contacts, your Studio Suite users, your rooms, your equipment, your blank virgin inventory, and your services. And the secret is there's actually 8 things that falls across all of these, and that is your rates. We need to set up all of the rates for all of the things that you've got in your facility. Why? Well, it's because we need to, we'll take a look at the module structure here to figure out why. And some of you have seen this before, so apologies if you're seeing this again. But in order to fully explain the whole thing, we need to see a little bit of the big picture. We did a webinar last week on productions and projects and calendar. So we're going to peek just ahead of that a bit to see how this all fits together. So let's start at the top. There are productions, and a production could be a season of a TV series or a feature film or any kind of large project that has smaller projects. It could be, I don't know, you get the idea. So within each production, there is one or more projects. So if we were using the model of a season of a TV series, each episode could be a project, or in a feature film, each reel could be a separate project, or each phase. Maybe the pre-production is a project, the production is a project, the post-production of the video editing is one project, the audio editing is another project, and so on. And then within each project, you can have one or more events. And an event is when we take one of our resources, which is what we're going to be creating today. And our resources are rooms or equipment or contacts, clients, vendors, or services, or media inventory and materials. When we combine those with a date and a time, actually, when we have rates for those things, and then we combine the resource, the date, and the rate, that is what we call an event. So these are the things that also appear in the calendar, which then can appear on your phone, which then can also be sent out to an invoice, because that's what it's all about making the money. So with that, let's jump over to Studio Suite. And I think I am seeing your questions. Let's see, where can we find the recording after the webinar? You'll probably get an email. We haven't set the page up yet, but it will be there. If you just go to webinars, it'll see, future ones or past ones. It'll be pretty obvious, I think. And so here we are in Studio Suite. And I didn't mention that, but this is modeled after Chapter 7 in the Studio Suite manual called 7 Things You Must Do. So if you have that handy, you could look there, or I'm going to kind of be talking about it, so you don't really have to. But this is what Studio Suite looks like when you get it. And let's go into the setup area, and let's create our company. This Planet Perfect Post is the kind of the default company that comes with Studio Suite, and we want to put in our own company. So let's hit New. And that's going to create a new record, and I'm going to call it My Great Company. And something important is if this is your primary company, the one that you're most often going to be referencing, give it a company number of 1. Now our sample company, excuse me, just 8. Planet Perfect Post comes in as company 1, so give that a company number 2. The one point here is that you can have more than one company. If you are always, you might have a production company, a post-production company, a development company, a rental company, a music company. You can have all of them set up in Studio Suite. Your primary one is the one that's number 1. So you'd put in the address. I'm just going to kind of be quick here and excuse my typing as we go through here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm just going to put in some quick typing. Um, so I've set up my company. We could pick our language over here if we want to. And this is our phone number format. So I like number, 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 dot, number, 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 dot, number, 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 number. But you could put dashes in here or however you like. Every new contact record is going to have this default as the phone number format. Uh, in Australia, by the way, they've got different phone number formats for mobile and landline, and so they can't really use this. So if that applies to you, um, there you know. You'd put in your currency symbol right here. This will appear everywhere. So you would create as many new companies as you needed. For now, we'll just use this one, and then we go to logos. So if you've got a 2-button mouse, you can go down to Insert Picture, or if you're on a PC, you can right-click. Um, if you have a 2-button mouse, you can right click, or you could press Control or Option on your keyboard to get these. And we'll go Insert Picture, and I'm going to put in a logo here. Let's say it's this one here. I've got the wrong logo for my company. Let me do this. I'll call this Super Bad Studios. Changing my company name. Super bad, bad in a good way. You know what I mean, right? So here's the logo. I'm going to option drag over here. So the first one is what you see on screen. The second one is the print version. Sometimes you might need a lower resolution or a black and white one if you've got um, a black and white printer. And then here's a watermark version, obviously kind of a faded gray one. This appears behind some uh, printouts. And then we can also do another option or control drag down to here. This is where if you did have a pre-designed letterhead format graphic, you could stick it there. And this is where you can set up what kind of letterhead you've got. Notice you probably can't, it's all pixelated, but this one is calculating a letterhead based on your company name, your address, and your logo. And the custom, if I click in there, is going to be using the little one that I set up here, just as an example. So we can flip back and forth between whatever kind of default letterhead you like to use. Let's go into taxes. Everybody loves taxes. So we need to create a new tax. How do you do that? You hit the Create New button. So we put that in there, and I'm going to call this, I live in LA, so I'll call this county tax. And let's call that 0.0975. I think that's what it is now. Here's a little tip. Obviously, every state has different rules for their taxes. In California, if you're shipping stuff to a different county, you've got to create a tax for them as well. So I'm going to put in San Diego, and I'll make this 0.09 or something like that. I have no idea what their tax is. If you're in Canada, you might need the Reveal Tax After Tax options. Now, setting tax defaults below selected taxes that would most commonly be for a single client. So if the majority of your clients are in your county, you would go ahead and select that. And here's your default billing terms, whatever you want to put in there. Essentially what happens is that every new contact record will inherit these tax scenarios, and you can change that per client as needed, as long as the options are set up here. Now, another thing in LA is that the only thing that we can tax is media. So I'm going to clear out my rooms tax here. In places like New York, every single thing is taxable. And what this does is it sets up the rates that we're going to be creating in a little bit to know that no matter what rate you're creating, it's going to be taxed. But since I'm in LA, I'm going to clear these out. And the only rates that are going to get taxed are media rates that I create. That's enough taxes for now. Let's move on to titles. So these are the slots that get created for every project. We've got to name what we call our clients. Typically, it's client. Some places they call that an account or a division or an agency or a student or whatever. I typically use client. Every project that we create will have some people slots in there, like what kinds of people are involved in the project that you're working on. So my projects, I've always got a producer, I've always got an editor. Let's say I've got an assistant as well. I mean, an engineer as my third slot. If I need to create another one, excuse me, then I'll hit assistant. So every new project is going to have these slots for people to put them in there. I'm going to take a quick look at some module preferences. So if we send out late letters from invoices, this would be the text. And these little chevron things here, it's going to insert the actual field value within that. So don't change what's inside these chevrons. It'll inherit that from the invoice. Some general invoice settings. The terms for our invoices are 30 days. We can set up a late fee, APR of 10% or whatever number you put in there. And then the aging. Different accounting systems calculate aging differently. Some of it do by the invoice date. Some of it do calculate by the due date. So just pick whichever one you like. And just so you see here which kinds of things are going to be included on the payments section of an invoice printout. We can either do all recent client payments or just this invoice client payments. Here's an invoice comment that's going to be on every invoice. Of course, you can change it per invoice as needed, but this will set it up as a default for you. And then determining the sort. Different people like their invoices sorted in different ways, and here's where you can have it sort kind of organically as you create it or summarize it into categories. If you're doing QuickBooks, this is where you would get into that. That is not the focus of this conference, though, so we're not going to talk about that. Let's move on to projects. We did the default client title already. It's multi-day events as continuous. So this depends on the different kinds of work that you're doing. If you're a rental company and when you book something out, like a camera, if it goes out on Monday and it's gone around the clock until it comes back on Friday, that's what we call continuous. However, if you are more of a studio and you're renting a room by the hour or by the day, those things are not continuous. If somebody books it on Monday through Friday, it probably means Monday from 9 to 5-ish, Tuesday 9 to 5, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday 9 to 5. So it's not going to book it around the clock. So you can just set this up as a default for how you book things. And then, of course, you can adjust it per project and even per event as needed. This is a global setting to where you're going to specify to include people's phone numbers or emails on the project printout. Sometimes it's a security thing, sometimes it's not. So here's where you can set a global preference. And of course, you can adjust that per project as well. Quick entry default times. This is where, for example, in Nashville, they have some specific time chunks that they work in when they're doing music sessions, 9 to 12, 1 to 3, and so on. Or maybe if you're in a facility that, a university that has classes, you could set up a couple of default class chunks in here. And this will save you from having to, pick a menu from a time. Every time you book something, you can just click a button for number 2 to get it to be 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And we'll see that in effect in a little bit. The events preferences here. If we are documenting like lunch breaks or things like that, sometimes you need to include that in the rate calculation. Other times you don't. So here's your preference for that. This is a repeat of the continuous thing we just talked about. Let's move on to media inventory. Some of you never deal with physical media inventory like tapes and CDs and things like that. Some of you do. And if you need StudioSuite to reconcile that, you would click the reconcile checkbox. If you want it to automatically do that, you can click the automatic. If it's not automatic, it's going to ask you when you invoice something to say, hey, you haven't reconciled yet. Go ahead and put in there. And what that means is if you book, say, 10 DVDs on a project, you have to actually tell StudioSuite that you've used them. Maybe you know that next Tuesday you need 10, but then Tuesday comes about and you only needed 8 of them, or maybe you needed 12. You need to inform StudioSuite of that before you reconcile it. Now, barcodes for all media inventory are derived from UPC code or the record number. I suggest the UPC code because that's easiest. In legacy systems, we use the record number, so now you have the option. Library. This field determines a kind of a starting point or how your library number is going to appear. So you can put in a prefix We've got an SS for Studio Suite, but you might want to change it to the initials of your studio, or maybe some kind of suffix like the year, people like that. Media comes from different words here. Some people call it stock, some people call it virgin, some people call it from the vault. Whatever word you like can be there. Generate a barcode number from the library number. That's probably a good idea. Keep those in sync. And then kind of global preferences here for printing with or without barcodes, with or without time codes on any media labels, if anybody out there is still printing media labels. Default timecode format. This is where you can set your default. And running times, either a summary of individual title durations on a library reel, or the timecode difference between the first start and the last end. That'll make more sense once we get into library, which we're not doing today. Next thing over is petty cache. I would say just leave this. Here's a default markup and how things are going to appear in QuickBooks. So you don't really need to worry about that for the scope of this one. Let me just look at some questions here. Our task events. I'm not sure what that means. Okay, moving on. Where's my mouse? Value lists. So this is categories. And a lot of people just work with the default categories that come with Studio Suite. And you can certainly create your own. Rooms, equipment, people, media. Let's see, what's something that we could do? I'm going to create a new one just called shoot. And I can specify, oh, excuse me, it's showing up off of my other screen. So I just typed in shoot for my new category, and I'm going to put in a sort order. I see that I'm missing 5 there. So why is a sort order important? It's going to put it in the sequence that you like, and when you see drop-down menus, it's going to put it in this order. If we did it alphabetically, you would always see, what would you see, credit first in your list, and that's kind of weird, or AICE, AICP. So this lets you just define the order, not only of how it appears in the menu, but how things are going to get summarized when you do reporting. So this is kind of important just to determine how things look, but that's about it. When we're creating these categories, we want to kind of align them with modules within Studio Suite. This is not critical. In fact, I think this is not even in use anymore, but I like to still just set up my word for equipment may correspond to the equipment module. Maybe you use a different word, like in the UK, they call it kit. They don't call it equipment. So that would synchronize your kit with our equipment inventory module. If you're using QuickBooks, this is where you can set up a default account name for that category and a default type. If you're not using QuickBooks, this won't mean anything to you, but if you are, that's another webinar anyway. Here we can also specify which kinds of items we're going to share our calendar with, and this is talking about iCal or Outlook. And in Stu Suite 10, there's another area where we get into sharing with Google Calendar, which is not affected by this. Invoice description. This determines when a room appears on an invoice, what is going to get calculated as text. For things like rooms, you want to start date and time, end date and time, maybe the action of what you did in the service or rate name that you're going to be using. For other things like media or dubs or something like that, start and end times aren't nearly as important. So when we go to media, it's just the date and the service or rate name. So that's why you would need that. Moving on to booking status. This is where you can define all the statuses that you're using. A lot of people just stick with what comes out of the box in Studio Suite. But if you wanted to edit this list, you click the edit button. If ever I'm talking and you think that you're not seeing something, sometimes things are appearing on my other screen. So not that I'll notice if you tell me, but that's why. So here are the statuses that I've set up. And if I want to put in one here called great, that's my status. Someone's getting upset in the background there. So here's all of my statuses. I'm going to hit OK. And now great has appeared as my options. And I can also set up a color for that. So I click on the little thing here, and let's say that great is, let's see, purple. Purple is great. And we can now in Suite 10 set up some parameters or some, what's the right word? I'll call it parameters for different statuses, like skip conflict check. Maybe if we're doing quotes, we don't need to check conflicts on these things. We don't need to get those quoted items in reports. If something maybe is invoice received, approved, rental. So some things we don't need to show in calendar. I'll just stick with the quote idea. So we don't need to show quoted projects in the calendar unless we do. Option to select that. And also, do we want it to appear in external calendars? Like maybe you don't want all of the things that are quotes to appear in your Google Calendar or your iCal calendar, but you do want to see them in your Studio Suite. So now you've got total control over that kind of thing. On the right side, some statuses are special. Studio Suite needs to know what your version of the following statuses are. So because we've got people using multiple languages or they have different words for things, some particular statuses need to be handled differently within Studio Suite. So, if you have a 5-hour session with a 1-hour hold, at the end, you need to specify what your version of hold is, and so on for these other ones. To be checked out, that's equipment that's on reserve. To be checked out is not checked out yet, or whatever your word for it is. And then on down the line here. Record numbers. If you have a specific record number that you like to start with, you can set that up here. So I want my projects to start with the year. So I'm going to put 13 for the year and then 0001, something like that. So my first project will be 130001. That gives me 9,999 projects in 2013, and I'll always know what sequence it is. And then when 2014 comes around, we can just change that to whatever the next number is. I'll put that there. So you could go in and set those all up. If you don't care, don't worry about this. This is just if you need to be able to do that. I'm going to go over to miscellaneous, and I think you can ignore most of this stuff here. Here's where you would set up your Twitter. One of the new things in Studio Suite 10 is being able to tweet directly from Studio Suite. And the intention there is if you've got 50 people on a production or something like that, you can send everybody without selecting them all uniquely. You can just send them a tweet. And so this is where you can set that up. Let's see. Not going to get into, okay. So in some corporate environments, you're not allowed to save to maybe an application folder or a documents folder. There's different rules on that. So this is where you can control the places that Studio Suite is going to save files like PDFs and things like that. This is some add-on plugins if you're doing QuickBooks or Outlook or Address Book or any other thing like that. This is where you can get into some of those advanced bits. Web views. This is where you can control for the Web Glancer module that comes with the Studio Suite Network version, which modules are going to be accessible through a browser. And so you can turn those on and off. And I'll just mention that these are read-only, view only. So maybe you don't want people from the internet to be able to get into your Studio Suite contacts, or maybe you do. In either case, they do have to log in with their Studio Suite credentials, so it's not like it's open to the public. And this is where your web add-ons are on your server. And this determines whether in the web request module, you're going to allow people to pick the resources that they like to select. I would say turn that on by default. SMS carriers. This is for the SMS messaging that comes out of Studio Suite. We've put all the big ones in here. They all have different formulas or addresses that you need to use when you are sending an SMS message to somebody. So this is why we've got that in there. If maybe there's a new carrier or a new part of the world or a different carrier, you would put that in, the name of them, and then substituting the phone number of your cell phone, you would still use $num$, and that gets substituted out later. It's a better way to say that. And then here is whatever the address that they use for those SMS messaging. Autolog. One of the new features in Studio Suite is it's going to track all the changes that you've made. For example, if you remember, I initially created my new company, My Great Company, and then I changed it to Superbad Studios. And that was done on 1/31/2013 at 1:09 p.m. by admin. And the field name was company name. So that's one of the new features in 10. And we'll look at that in a little bit more later. All right, so that's all of the main menu setup that we've done. That's all of step 1 that we're going to do. Just step 2, your contacts. So guess where we go? Contacts module. Let's go to the detail tab. And this is obviously where we keep track of our clients, our vendors, our employees, our personal people, maybe mom and dad we want to put in here, any prospects, people that you're going to be doing business with or would like to be doing business, and also location. If you are doing shoots and you need to go out and keep track of all the places you're going, this is where you can do that. This is the function bar at the top of the screen. This is how you manipulate records in the database. I think most of you are familiar with this, but these are the different records in the database. And if I want to create a new one, gosh, all I do is I hit the new button. You could also, let's see, I'll put in my name, Stoner. Um, if you're on a Mac, press Command N, and if you're on a PC, you can press Control N. Let's see. So we put in the company, the address. One little tip people don't know about is if you put in the zip code, it's going to autofill the city and state for you. So if you're wondering why does it go from company to address one to zip code, that's why, or postal code. Um, that's a little tip there. The US and Euro address format just determines on printouts the address format. They do it differently in Europe as than we do here. So if I put in a phone number, I'm just going to put in 12345678890. I didn't put any dots or dashes in there, but as soon as I hit enter, it's going to set that up in the number format that we've specified here. It inherited this from my main menu settings, but if this guy, for example, was in Europe and or I'm a different user and I really like it to be differently, I could put in a plus number. Maybe we have to put in the +1 thing and then a dash. If I do that, and then I put in another number, 12345678900, it's going to format it that way. So that's how the number formatting works. And we've got a menu of the different kinds of phone numbers, and of course you can edit this if needed. And for any of you StuSuite 9 users, it used to auto-populate these labels, but now you need to select them because we've now got essentially infinite number of phone numbers, whereas before they were kind of fixed. You do want to check the checkbox of the primary phone number. This is the number that's going to get referenced elsewhere throughout Studio Suite. You can have more than one, but typically it's just one, and that's again what gets referenced. Emails, of course, we can put in as many as we like, and you want to check the checkbox for the primary one for the same reason. Um, so let's put that in real quick. And same with URLs. There's a new little thing here in SuiteSuite 10. It's going to jump right ahead and show you. Let's see, I'll put in, maybe I've got a YouTube. Let's do YouTube /Studio Suite.com. So we can put in as many URLs as we want relative to a client or vendor or whatever. When we go to the web viewer, this is jumping way ahead here. If I go to my URL number 1, lo and behold, there is my own website, my URL number 2. I don't think that's a real one, that YouTube one. But so now there's a web viewer in the contacts module where we can see all this kind of information, where we are and so forth. So that's where those URLs on the detail tab are relevant. I kind of hinted at this earlier, but you do want to make sure to make sure that you've got the correct checkbox checked. If they are a client, make sure that's checked. If they're a vendor, make sure that's checked, because that does affect how this person is going to be appearing throughout the rest of Studio Suite. And yes, you can be more than one. Sometimes you're a client, sometimes you're a vendor. So name, address, phone number, that's basically it. We're not doing the full tour of the contacts module. We're just creating some people. Let's put in SMS. So I'm just going to put in my secret number again. And I'm going to say that I am AT&T. So what's going to happen now is because I've selected AT&T, if I click SMS, I can type in a message. And if that were my real number, that would show up on my phone in a matter of seconds. So just make sure that if you put the cell phone up here, you may also want to put it down here and also ask at least your staff who their carrier is, and then that way you're going to be able to send them messages. If they have instant message client, you could put that in here. FTP, user account and password. Okay, something really important for your staff to put in is their title or their position. So let's say this guy Joel is artist. He thinks he's very artistic. But let's say he's also a carpenter and a cameraman. I'm holding down the Command key on my keyboard right now. This is allowing me to multi-select multiple things. And when you multi-select them, you have to make sure to hit the Enter key, not the Return key, but the Enter key on your keyboard. And that's going to put in multiple values there. And you can also type something in there. So if I also make sandwiches, maker, I could put that in here. I don't have to pick from the menu if I can type. If I want to edit that list, hit the pencil to be able to edit the list. The reason it's important to put these titles in is if I make somebody bookable, and you're probably all familiar with the bookable uh, thing in StudioSuite, but that makes them available to be used as a resource on a project. Remember that kind of map that we saw earlier? When we make somebody bookable, that means they are going to be available in the calendar. So I'll say, yes, put me in the calendar, and also available to be used in projects. Something that's new in SuiteSuite 10 is we can say that they're bookable either by their name, which is Joel Stoner, or if there was a company, maybe you're using an external rental company called, big rental company. If you make them bookable as a company, you'll be able to select them there as the company name rather than the individual that you're talking to on the phone. So that's a new thing. You can also pick as many different categories as you want. So we created the category of shoot earlier. So if I want to really get precise about all the different kinds of people that I'm working with, I could create different categories for different kinds of people. And that's going to affect how they're showing up in reporting and also how they get summarized on invoices and printouts. So we talked about titles and how to make them bookable. Let's go over to, I think the next thing is I'm just gonna take a quick spin through some of the tabs here. More info. Yeah, let's look at that. This guy has food preferences, other preferences, default project specifications. Maybe some of your clients you want to do custom. You want to put their address on their media label if you're still printing labels, or their phone number, or even their logo. So this is where you can set that up per client. Let's see, anything else here? We'll go to the employee tab. Since we're doing some initial entry, we could put in some birthdays, which is going to calculate the age, emergency contact info. This is all pretty self-explanatory. Hey, what's this over here? Create user account. So I'm going to create a user account for Joel, and it's going to do it very quick and easy. It's not going to give us all kinds of options to put in anything. So I'm going to put the account name as Joel. Password is 1, and I'm going to give myself a privilege set of administrator. And I guess it's a good time to talk about these. So StudioSuite comes with really 12. These last two aren't really there. Um, Privilege sets, which are kind of predefined roles that control the privileges that people have got when they log into StudioSuite. Obviously, you can imagine what administrator is. It's kind of decreasing visibility and functionality as you go down the list. And then you can edit within those, but just pick one that's closest to the kind of person that you're dealing with. If security is not that big a deal in your facility, just give everybody administrator because that's going to save you a headache later. If you like to have things really buttoned down, aim to the lower side. Um, so I'm going to do administrator there. I'm going to pull this off here just for a second as I hit OK on there. And as you're creating users, you may want to be able to set them up in our SuiteCloud platform. And this is where we're starting to aggregate a list of all of the StuSuite users up on our cloud registration system, which is kind of our first shot to some future technologies that I'm not going to talk about. But in this case, I'm going to cancel. But please do go ahead and submit those as you're going in there to create those. So we're now back in the employee, and that button that used to say create user account now says delete user account. I'm going to look at some other things quickly here. We're not getting it into rates just yet. Yeah, I take it back. We are. That's jumping ahead too far. Let's talk. Let me finish up this user account thing. No, would you think I've ever done this before? Yeah, so I'm going to continue on with the regular thing. So here, let's suppose Joel is a one of my staff guys. We need to create a rate for this employee. So I'm going to click the create rate button. And this is a regular rate. And I hate it when this happens, but it's jumped up off my screen at the top. Okay, so now we can see the full rate. When you're creating rates, it's going to always append a sequential number for that resource after each one. And that's because we need to make sure that rate names are unique. So you can always get rid of that number if you like. Let's call this an hourly rate, and let's say we're going to charge the client a whopping $10 an hour, and we have to pay me $8 an hour when we do that, which means we're making a $2 profit or a 25% profit. But the market rate for when Joel works is, let's say, $15. So we're given a good deal. We could make this a client-specific rate. So if when any one of these clients um, is the client, it's going to automatically use this rate. I'm not going to make this a client-specific rate. I could put an action here if whenever we use this rate, it's going to automatically put in one of those actions. I'm going to leave that blank. And also rate cards are new in StuSuite 10. If you have different rate structures for the different kinds of work, let's say you do some corporate work, some commercial, some educational, some film, some TV, you can actually set up different rate structures with within each one of those. And then if you define a project as a educational project, it'll apply educational rates. These are the external accounting details for QuickBooks or MYOB or whichever you're using. That's all I'm going to get into for rates right now. So we can create as many rates per resource as we want. So we were in contacts, employee. Okay, and so we just created a rate, and here it is for, it's for Eddie Editor. Let's go to Joel. So there's the rate that I just created, and we can create as many as we want. I'm not going to because it's going to appear up off the screen again. But here's all the rates for this person. Financial. So for clients, we could put in a credit limit, any remaining credit, which is going to calculate if I put in a $100,000 credit limit, because that's how I roll. Oh, I've got a $1 million. Awesome. Here's the default billing terms that got looked up when I created my record. Here is a default rate card for this person as a client, and it also put up my default tax. I could say, well, Joel lives in San Diego if I need to, but most of my customers are in LA County. If they're client exempt, I could check that, put in their exempt number. I could also put in a tax ID number if I need to do reporting based on that. I think that's all we need there. So a minute ago, when I created a rate, I did it for Joel, the employee. So when Joel is working, it's going to be coming in at that rate. We can also set up rates for the clients, or at least view them from here. So if we had, here's all of our rates down on the bottom. If we wanted to make a client-specific rate, we could apply one up. So let's say I have this client and we do compositing for them. Actually, let's call it Foley, since there's numbers in there already. So I've got a special, my normal Foley rate is $200 an hour. I'm going to hit the up arrow. This is going to make it a client-specific rate. And then whenever the client happens to be Joel Stoner, I'm going to say, well, he's kind of annoying, so let's make it $250 an hour for that service. So now whenever the client, Joel Stoner, books Foley, it's going to be charged at $250. So that's how you set up your client-specific rates. Just incidentally, this is not part of the setup, but we'll go in. This is where you would see media assets if this person had them. Any attachments would be right here, and obviously reports. So that is how we've set up the contact. I think we're coming up on break time, but I would like to just jump very quickly into user accounts, which is step 3. So sit tight. We're going to go into setup. I'm going to go to user accounts, and here we'll see that the Joel account that I created from contacts is in user accounts. A quick note, when you first get StudioSuite, it's going to have a couple accounts in there already. Admin is the default one that you use initially to log in. There's these 3 other ones. Notifications. This is a special account that StudioSuite uses to send notifications to cell phones from your StudioSuite server. So do keep that. Don't delete it. And same with the Zulu admin and Zulu delete. What the heck is Zulu? Zulu is a product that we use for the synchronizing to the Google Calendar. And when StudioSuite is talking to Google, it has to do it under a StudioSuite account, and that is Zulu admin. And when an event is deleted in Google Calendar, it has to tell a Studio Suite account what account to use when it deletes that. So there's that tracking. So that's the Zulu delete. But let's create a new account right here. So let's create a new account called Mike. Password is very secret one, and this guy is a editor. So I'll hit OK on that. And so there, Mike has an account, and I can select a name from the linked contact field for that person. And here's a drop-down list from all of my employees. And so let's pick, I don't have a Mike. I should have said Eddie. And here's where I'm going to set up the SuiteCloud platform. I'm just going to hit cancel here, but hopefully you'll please set that up. So now the guy named Mike has an account, but he's really linked to the record in contacts called Eddie Editor. Why do we need to do that? Because there's a lot of information about, boy, I really set that up confusingly. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to disable this account, and I'm going to do it right so it's less confusing. Sorry about that. So I disabled it, and then I deleted it, and I'm going to create another new account. So I'm going to call this one Eddie. It'll make more sense. Password 1, and give him Eddie, the editor engineer privilege set. Now I'm going to pick Eddie from the drop-down list here of the people in the contacts module. So basically what we want to do is have a record in contacts for all of our users. Some of their preferences are stored in the contacts module, in their record in the contacts module. Some of their preferences are stored in the user account, and there's a reason for that, but don't worry about it. If it's okay, I'm just going to finish up user accounts before we jump into our break. So for Eddie, there's some preferences here. If he's got a lot of a high level of privilege set and also a lot of permissions, he's going to want all of the buttons on the main menu. If he wants a lesser number of buttons, this is the main menu 5. This one has only 6 buttons on it. So you get kind of a menu of various options with various different numbers of buttons on it. You can certainly leave it number 1 if you want to. You just might have less buttons on it. So when Eddie Editor creates a contact record, it's going to get flagged as a client, or if he's putting in a whole bunch of vendors, maybe just flag this temporarily. Passwords. We can require change at the next login or every X days. I hate that kind of thing, but some people need it. Startup alerts. Should Eddie know about past due invoices or low media inventory or equipment maintenance that's overdue, overdue equipment, or overdue library items? Some people need to know those things when they log in. Other people don't. You can ignore this mobile thing. We actually didn't use that, but forgot to remove it from the program. Down the bottom right here is company. So this is going to set up a default company for whenever Eddie is creating a project or a piece of equipment or a contact record. Those are going to get flagged under Eddie's company. And of course, those can be changed as needed, but just as a default. Maybe you've got staff that works in your rental company and other staff that works in your post-production company, and this will help flag their records that way. Email setup. This is where you would put in their email details so that they have the ability to send out of Studio Suite. I'm not going to get too detailed on there. That's more of a techie thing. Here's some default preferences for projects. When Eddie creates a project, what type is it going to be? Maybe he's an editor, so I'm guessing he's going to be a post-production guy. And I don't want him give him the ability to book fully approved things. So all of his projects are booked as waiting for approval. If you're the manager, you would probably book them all as confirmed. What's the default project sort? And this is kind of jumping way ahead, but maybe I like this one called Hierarchy 2, which determines how your project line items are going to get set within the project. And by default, are you creating budgets originally, or are you just creating actuals originally? This should be a one or the other option. I typically just do actuals. And again, when any editor is creating projects, his default start time is 9, ends at 5, and his default booking status, which is the line items, the actual resources, not the project, but the rooms and the equipment and the people, what status are they booked as? Calendar preference. not going to worry about this too much right now. These preferences are more about how the calendar is operating, and that's kind of another webinar. Account permissions. This is where we can control who can see and do exactly what within StuSuite. There's over 200 of these, so I put in a filter to be able to filter them. You can see the blue ones are the ones that he does have permission to, the white ones that he does not. So let's see, what I'm concerned about is invoices, so I just want to go look there. Good, he does not have the ability to view any invoices. Maybe he's my trusted editor, and I want to make sure that he can check in to see that all of the invoices that he's worked on have been done. So I could turn that on, but I'm not going to. I don't trust him. Rates. I want to make sure he doesn't have rates. Yep. Let's look at library. What can he do in a library module? He can do everything. Well, I don't want him to be able to delete any library records. And I don't want him to be able to override the release of any media assets. So I'm going to turn those permissions off. But I am allowing him to view, edit, create, print. Oh, I don't want him to release those either. The override release, by the way, if a client is set to not be allowed to release their media, maybe they haven't paid their bill, we want to that gives a message, and this would give them the ability to override that and say, yes, I am going to release it. Okay, so that's account permissions. And by the way, you can, if you wanted to turn them all on, there's a button here, select all, which once you do it, you can't undo it. And then suppose you've come up with this perfect algorithm of permissions that you love that's appropriate for a bunch of people. You can copy them. So if I hit this copy button and then I go to another user, let's say Joel, I can paste. And now Joel has all the same permissions that Eddie Editor did. I don't really want that to happen, so I'm going to hit select all. Now Joel has full permission. There's a couple questions that have popped up, and I will address some of those now. One is, can you set up a varied rate card? I think I already showed that, but yes. So for every resource, you can create a whole bunch of rates, hourly, daily, weekly, and so on. They can have overtime. I didn't get into that, but you can set up overtime rates. And you can also set up client-specific rates, so that, for certain clients, it's this one, and for others, it's not. Are you able to hear me, everybody? I think you should be able to hear me. So, and there's also, we did the rate cards. So yes, you can do a bunch of different kinds of rates. Next question. In the Contacts Employee Details tab, how secure is that information? What privileges can see that info? Okay, good question. So I'm going to go over here. We're talking about employee info. There is actually a permission. So you have fine control over who can get in here and who can't. But by default, obviously, any administrator, I think it's the first 4 levels down to accounting can get into this tab, and anything below accounting cannot. But again, it is its own permission, so you can turn this off. Next question is, will StuSuite warn if you're attempting to name a rate the same as an existing rate? Yes, it will. You'll get a conflict dialog that it must be unique. And sometimes that can be annoying, but you do have to make them unique, which is why we have to name them with a serial number at the end. I do not see any other accounts listed. Is that a problem? Yeah, so that's in the user accounts. By default, when you go there, it comes in showing only your account, assuming that that's the one that you want to deal with. Now, because I was in here earlier, it's got them all listed, but typically it'll find just your account. And then just like in every other module, you'll just want to click the Find All button to get them all back. So actually, just to show the omit tool, I'm going to go omit, 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 omit. Sometimes it's useful to be able to whittle down your found set, and you can use the omit button to do that, and then the find all button to bring everything back in. I'm assuming you can all hear me. Yes. Okay, so let's move on, and please bring in any other questions as we go through. We've done step 3. Filtering through that. The next one is rooms, step 4. your rooms. So let's go into the rooms module. Here's what comes StuSuite out of the box. One other note: what some people do is they will go in and just start changing the names of these things, which is typically fine. Let's say this is Studio ABBA. However, it could be bad because there is a process called delete sample data. So if this is a sample data and you decide that you want to one day get rid of all of that sample data, that means that your rooms are going to get deleted. So better to create your own new records than modify the existing data. So I'm going to call a room called My Great Room. That's my own little composing room. And this is call it a control room, and it's in building 1. You don't have to use the building field, it's optional. I could put in some phone numbers, maybe some extensions. Here is what I mean: 125, and this is by the left of the console, this is by the right of the console, and this is the producer's desk. And you can edit this list, of course. Now, sometimes when you're booking a room or anything like that, maybe some other rooms come along with that. So let's say Studio ABBA comes along. And not that you ever would, but some people have requested to be able to book a room via barcode. So you could do that as well. Um, so these are different room locations where your AC outlets would be. The breakers, amperage, and what kind of power, clean, dirty, and your dimensions, and any other special notes for this room. Once we've got that all set up, we click the Not Bookable button to make it bookable. And I want to show this in my calendar right now. Yes, I do. So now this room is visible in my calendar. And again, I could go to the lists and see them all. There's my great room, and it's bookable. And let's go to rates. Let's create a rate for this. So create new rate. And unfortunately, it's peered off the top of the screen again. I'm not going to switch my monitor. So I'll call this a regular rate. And it's named My Great Room 1 as the rate. I'm going to say that this is a daily rate. So we'll get to see how these things are calculated differently. Let's say it's $100 a day. And I know that it's going to cost me roughly $10 a day in terms of rent and electricity and things like that. It gives me a profit roughly of 90 and 900%. But I know on the market that I could book this room for $150 an hour. Any other things here? Some of these checkboxes are fairly self-explanatory. I'll mention one thing for if you're doing equipment rental. Sometimes they do things like a 4-day week or a 3-day week. So here's the bill days per week. Hopefully you can still see that at the top of my screen there. So if when we book this, if somebody booked it for a week, I'm only going to charge them for 3 days. That's where you can set that up. Otherwise, we leave it to 7. So I hit continue, and there it's named My Great Room, and I'm just going to create another rate. I think that one was daily. I'm going to make this one hourly, and let's say I charge 15 an hour for this, and it cost me 10. Oh, actually 1, right? 1 an hour. So now I've got a couple different rates available for these, and really what I would do is name them daily and hourly, but that's falling off my screen for some reason, so we'll ignore that for now. Visual layout. Here's where you could insert a picture, maybe, or a blueprint or something like that of the room itself, which you could then copy and email to somebody if you had to. Attach an FTP. Put in any blueprints or purchase receipts for carpet or things like that. So that's rooms. That's probably the easiest of the 7 things you must do. I think we blasted through all of them. We did the rates, and we talked all about rates. The next step is equipment. So if we go to the installed equipment, this is showing me all of the equipment that's installed in that room. Hey, we don't have any. So I go to the equipment tab in the upper right. Here's my list of equipments. And to create a new one, there's a couple different things here. This is new in StuSuite 10. It used to be that every device had its own record. But now we've got things called collections, which is a collection of expensive like-kind things, like cameras. Maybe you've got 5 red cameras, and they're all exactly the same. They have different serial numbers. And when you book them, because you got a bunch of them, maybe you need one on Monday. You don't care which one right now you're going to use. You just know you need a camera. So in that kind of scenario, you could book the collection, which is kind of like a virtual representation of those 5 cameras And then on that day, as you're walking out the door with that camera, you can scan in the barcode of the one that you're holding. It's going to say, oh, I'm a member of the red camera collection. I'm going to swap out this real camera for the virtual camera. And so it's just a great way to manage when you've got large numbers of like kind expensive things. And I say like kind expensive like kind because there's other things like sandbags and mic stands and filters and um, adapters that you don't really need to track uniquely. Maybe wedding chairs is a good example. You've got 300 wedding chairs. You don't put barcodes on all of them because they're all the same. So that's what we call a pool. And a pool is uh, good because it allows you to have 300 of something without also creating a unique Studio Suite record for each one of them. And when you think about it, there's kind of different inventory management requirements for um, things like chairs and red cameras. When that red camera goes out, you want to make sure that that red camera comes back in and that it's all happy and shiny. But if you send out 10 chairs, you don't care if maybe 10 different chairs came back. You just want to make sure you got 10 chairs. So Stu Suite needs to know what kind of device it is, and that's a new feature in 10. So without going too deep into it, I'm just going to, as if that wasn't too deep, I'm going to create just some regular items. And just to be quick here, I'm going to do an AKG 123 microphone mic. So there's that. We would put in a serial number. Sometimes the serial number is good to be the same as the barcode number. Other times you want it to be the same as your record number. So I might put in 8 here or 00008. What a lot of people do is they go to a printing company and they get some durable barcode labels made that are all sequential. And so in that case, you would just scan in whatever your barcode is into this barcode field. Different people have different barcode workflows and requirements. So if you have some questions on that, let me know and we can talk about that. Purchase date, this is important because maybe depreciation is a factor on that. Let's say we purchased it from what version, warranty expiration. This is all kind of self-explanatory. Smart Sort determines, if you're printing on a list of all of your equipment, what things should be near the top. In a music studio, they usually have the console and the speakers near the top, and then they have things like EQs and compressors and microphones later. Same kind of thing in video facilities. That just lets you kind of control that. Am I going to include this in my promotional list of equipment? The big things, the cameras, you would. The small things, the adapters and stands, you wouldn't. What's the weight? This is good if you ever need to ship it or if you're creating packages of equipment. Dimensions, same thing. Out of service means that we're not using it anymore. What's the cost? Let's say it's $100. What's the value? Well, it's really only worth $80. What did I pay? I have a monthly payment. This earnings field is new in 10. This is going to summarize all of the bookings that you've had with this item and compare it to the cost of it. So right now we've lost $100 because we don't have any bookings for it. We'll see that change if we actually start to book it. It'll get whittled down and eventually hopefully turn into profit. That's what we like, right? Lease number, lease expiration. Here's another new thing from StuSuite 10 is the owned by. It used to be that everything that you had in Studio Suite was owned by one of your internal companies. So there's my internal company. But what if I tend to rent a lot of equipment from one of the local rental houses that I want to be available in my bookable items? Well, the only vendor I've got right now in this system is me, which is confusing. But normally there'd be another vendor down here listed, maybe the local rental company. So I could pick that, put that into my inventory, book it, schedule it as if I owned it, and then StuSuite can do some reporting on what of your internal versus external stuff that you've booked, and your client never needs to know. So I'm going to put this back to owned internal, and then pick my internal company. Insured by IP address, blah 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 blah. Kind of boring. You can right click in here to insert a picture, or option or command or control click to get that menu. Let's talk about a package. Well, first thing I'm going to do is make this mic bookable in the category of equipment. Some people that have a lot of equipment inventory like to set up their categories to have different kinds of equipment. You can do that if you like, but for now we'll just call this generic equipment. I'll make it bookable. And I do want it in my calendar. So let's talk about creating a package. That's whenever I book this mic, I want some other things to go along with it. So I'm going to click on Add, and here is a list of other equipment that I've got. So let's say I want that Avalon to go along with it. And I'm going to, whenever I make a change about something, you've probably noticed that I haven't set it. But if something's bookable and I make a change about it, the other parts of Studio Suite need to know about that change. So I typically just hit OK and OK here again. So now, whenever I book the mic, this other thing's going to come along, and we can have as many of these as we want, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. And it's also combining the package weight of everything. So if I have to ship this thing somewhere, I could. So let's create a depreciation schedule. Let's say we paid $100 after 5 years. We think it'll be worth, I don't know, $50, and that's going to be the end of life. I'm going to scroll forward. Let's pretend this is 5 years from now. There's the end of life. And I'm going to go ahead and create a depreciation schedule. So if I click this, create depreciation schedule, I clicked it twice. It's going to, over time, slowly start to depreciate the value of this mic. And if I go over here, it's giving me that 5 year span. And it's telling me in year 4, it's going to be worth 60. In year 5, it's going to be worth 50. This is actually a lot more precise than a lot of accounting systems. And you can do some reporting over here on the reports tab of how much is all my stuff worth today. Right here. So start and end date depreciation. This will actually show you a change in value from the beginning of one year to the end of another, or whatever date range you specify. Click on that. I'm not going to do it right now. Detail. Um, maybe I should do a pool item. So let's do that. So I'm going to create a new pool item. Create new. And I'm going to call it a generic sandbag. We have a bunch of them. And let's say I've got 20 of them. So this is going to, rather than creating 20 separate records, I've got one record for 20. When I book these things, it's going to manage the inventory. It's going to pull them out of this quantity. It won't let me book more than 20 at a time. And when they come back, it'll know that the inventory has increased. So it's different than having a separate record for every item. And since I did that, I should also do a collection. So I hit new. So after defining as much detail as you can about this collection, including rates, click the green Add button in the collection area at the bottom left to define members of the collection. I think I got all that. So let's pick our thing here. Let's suppose that this is a Apple keyboard, laptop, MacBook Pro. That's what I'm using. So I could put in a purchase date that's going to apply to a bunch of these. I purchased them all. I could put in some versions here. And so what I'm basically doing is creating the template, the virtual item for this. Let's say it's £2. I forget what it is. How much did I pay? I don't know, somewhere around 2 grand. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, so I've set this all up. I'm going to create a rate for it when we rent it. Create new rate. And it's bookable. I don't need to see this in the calendar. I'm going to click no. This is a regular rate. I'm going to do this by the day. And let's say we rent this thing for $100 a day, and it costs us $5 a day. So now I've got a rate for my collection. Notice we're in collection. So now what's going to happen is I can create members of this collection. It's going to inherit all of this information. It's going to inherit the rate. It's going to inherit the purchase date, all this information, the weight, which version it is, and so forth. So I'm going to click the Add to my collection. How many do I have? Let's say I got 6 of these things. So I hit OK. It's going to go kind of loop create 6 items, 6 actual items that have all the same information. So there we go. Apple laptop, MacBook Pro 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And these are now showing up in my actual equipment inventory rather than my collection inventory. So notice we're on equipment collection. If I hit the go to on one of these, that's going to bring me into the equipment module where I've got an actual record, and then I could actually here start to go in and put in barcodes. 0006. Oh, sorry, 01. Fast forward through here a couple. It's easier when you've got a scanner to do it. 00002. You get the idea. So it's asking me to change on each one of those. And then I can make any other tweaks for each one of these as needed. We'll see down here on my collection subtab uh, that I have things, and it's showing me that I've got two dots on here. The top one is showing me that it's a member of a collection and that there are other collection members. So that's how collections work. And again, just to repeat it, because it's a new concept to a lot of people. If I needed next Friday, not tomorrow, but a week from now, 3 laptops, I could book this collection with a quantity of 3 as a single line item. On next Friday, when I'm walking out the door with 3 laptops, I scan them 0001, 0002, 0003. It's going to turn that single collection line item into 3 actual line items with the actual information about those laptops that I'm walking out the door with. So I think that's kind of how that works, or I hope I've explained that well enough as far as the collections and the pools and the other items. Just took a quick spin through here. So we did rates. Event history. This is not necessarily part of the setup, but this is where you can see all of the usage that any piece of equipment that you've got has. So if I go back to my earlier records, here we can see this Digibeta video machine has been used 3 times, total number of hours, different projects it's been used on, and I can jump to any one of those. Maintenance history tracks all repairs, cables and connectors. The web viewer, you probably know all this stuff, is going to show us all kinds of information from Google and Craigslist about this particular item. B&H, if I wanted to buy some more, eBay, all that stuff. Okay, so I think that's step 5, your equipment. We've done all of that. So what happens if you've got other things? You don't have just people or just rooms or just equipment. You've got things that you do that aren't necessarily a physical thing, like script writing or something like that. Where do you create that? You do that in categories and items. Incidentally, this used to be part of the calendar module, and we broke it out into its own separate module because it was always weird to go to calendar to create something like meals. But anyway, here we are, categories and items. And on the left side are all of our bookable items that have been collected from the rooms and equipment and inventory, rooms, equipment, people, media inventory modules. And on the right side is which ones have been selected to appear in the calendar. So on the left side, in StuSuite 10, we've actually included some new things out of the box, AICE and AICP budget items. If you don't like those, if you don't use them, you can go to Manage Items. This is new in 10, and this is not really intended to be a frequent user area, which is why it's kind of ugly. I'm going to go into AICE and Find Mode, and I just found them all. And if I wanted, I could delete all of these items. I just want to spin through them all to make sure that these are all really those. They're really them. So from the records menu, which you can't see at the top of the screen, I can do delete found records. So that's how you can get rid of a bunch of stuff in one shot. If this hide thing is actually per user, so if in my company of Studio Suite, I don't need AICP or AICE, I can hide them, but this is going to set it up so other people, maybe the producers, could book those things, but I don't care about those things. I'm going to hide them just for myself. So here's remaining some of those other things that I've created. There's those laptops that I created. I could go in and let's make a new one. So I'm going to create a new item. And it's reminding me here that if it's a room or a piece of equipment or media or contact, it's better to create those things in those modules. That way you've got the detailed information for a person or a piece of equipment in that module. There's less information here. But for simple things like, let's say I'm going to do services, subcategory. Subcategory is optional. You don't have to have it. So I'm going to leave it empty. And I'm just going to call this delivery. Deliveries. For this kind of thing, I don't need to check for conflicts, and also times are not so relevant. Again, sometimes times are important, sometimes they're not. And I can create a rate for this from here, so I'm going to go create a new rate. It's appearing off the screen again, sorry about that. This is a one-time kind of thing, or each. And because it's typically different every time, I'm going to leave the price empty. That's going to prompt me to put that price in. So now I've got a thing called rate name. and sorry, a thing called deliveries and a rate for it as well. So I'm going to hit continue, and that's done. So let's say, oh yeah, whenever I do deliveries, I can filter it for here. What if I need to edit that thing after the fact? So this is new in C Suite 10 is we can edit these things right here. So there's my services deliveries. I click the go to button that brings me back into that same window again. And let's say whenever I book the thing called delivery, I need to book a person that's going to do it. So I pick my people there, and let's say that this guy named Wa is also going to get booked. So that's what we call the also books. So that's how you can create these kind of structures or packages of multiple things that get used. So that's new in C Suite 10, the ability to edit these things from here. Actually, it's not. I take that back. Um, so we can create as many of those things as we want. Let's say we have another thing. I'm just going to do it very quickly called another service called compositing. I might have one of those already, so I'm going to call it compositing too. Um, I do want to make sure I don't at least be notified about conflicts here, but times I don't know about. And again, whenever I do compositing, I want to book Edit Editor, and I also want to book a room to do it in, which would be, say, Studio B or my great room. Let's do that. And let me get rid of Studio B. So to remove something, reselect it again, and you'll see it get pulled out from the list. So now I've set up a bunch of things, and they should be appearing in my calendar. So I'm going to quickly go over to my calendar, and here they are. This is the older view of calendar. Let me go into my timeline. I thought I set those things to show in the calendar. Let me go into my settings here. So I'll pick Joel and my great room, and oh, let's do Foley because I think that's one of those things. So last week we did a webinar on productions, projects, and calendar. That's going to be posted to our site shortly, but that goes over a lot of these presets and things like that, and a lot of the calendar details. But I just wanted to show you how this stuff, now that we've created it in that module map that we started with, how some of these things are showing up. So let's go into February 1st, Friday, February 1st, and let's book my great room starting at 9 o'clock. And I think I added a child item to that. I don't remember. Um, so let's start with that. So I'm going to book that as a project. I'll create a new project. Here's all the people that I created. I created a client named Joel Stoner. There he is. Webinar. The yellow fields are required. Everything else is optional. So notice for Joel, the client, it brought in Joel's default taxes down here. So I've got all my yellow fields filled out. I could go ahead and pick who's involved. James is the producer. These are those 4 slots that we talked about very early, the 4 people that got created. Let's say we don't have an assistant on this one, but for this one we have a director. So could put that in there. New intent is the ability to add other items right here. So I'm going to click this little plus sign and I can add any other things to this. So I'm just going to pick wardrobe rental because I always need to make sure I have the right wardrobe when I'm working. So I'm going to hit next and we'll go to the project. So we'll see if my also books came in. They didn't. So I'm going to go ahead and add them from here. I'm going to click my add item button. So I'm going to go to laptop. So here's all those laptops I created. I'm going to laptop number 1. It brought in my default rate for this. There it is. So I'll add actual. Somebody can remind me. Oh, it's compositing, right? So now I'm going to do compositing. COMP. And I did 2. So when I hover over this, it's going to show me the things that are also going to get booked when I book that. So I'm going to select that. And another tip here is that when I've got the gear tool on these items, I can actually add more child items to that. So let's say I need a meal with my compositing, of course. So I've just added a meal to that event and it shows up in a list down here. It makes it easy to just add more stuff as you're going quickly. So add to project. And I guess I've got a conflict because maybe I think I made my great, yes, I did. I booked my great room originally in the calendar, and then I also made my great room a child item to compositing. So here we're seeing that take place right there. So that's back to our map, why we need to create all of those things and all of the rates to have them show up in our project and in our calendar when we create them. So there they all are, and there's the conflict that I created for myself. Let me see if there are any questions here. What's the difference between StuSuite 9 and StuSuite X? X seems to be more intuitive and user-friendly. We agree. In fact, we are days away from posting a video, an 8-minute video on everything that's new in X. It's taken a while to put together, but it's almost done, and you'll get an email blast. If you're on our list, you'll get a blast um, telling you that that is available, and that should be a matter of days. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday. Our equipment is already numbered. How can I enter this on StudioSuite? It is not a barcode. It is not a barcode. Well, if you've got, there's a bunch of user fields. So if you don't want to use the barcode field for your number, you could go into layout mode, and I'm going to option drag this. And by the way, next week's webinar is on layout mode by Byron, my main guy. And he's going to show you how to do a lot of this kind of stuff. But very quickly, oh, what you didn't see was on my other screen here. So I option dragged this field over to here, and this specify field window popped up on my other screen. I'm going to pick user text 1, and I'm going to make sure that it is editable. Let's see. I need to make sure you can see the toolbar. Inspector, where is the inspector? It's off screen. Let me bring that up here. So here's the inspector, and I'm going to go into data, and I'm going to make sure that I can get into it and browse. And again, this will be covered in more detail in next week's webinar. And so I'm going to exit layout. This dialog came up, save changes. So now I have another field right here that I can either import into or type into. You know what I've totally skipped on a lot of these is the ability to import your information. Excuse me. And to show that, I need to get up the window bar. Well, take my word for it. From the FileMaker's file menu, you can go down to import records, and you can show it an Excel file. And if you're in contacts, you can also import vCards. And if you get the address book plugin or the Outlook plugin, you can import from there. I don't really recommend those because it's a static one-time thing. You can import a chunk, and it's almost maybe not worth the cost of those plugins because you can typically export from those into either a vCard or an Excel file. So here you could put in your own number, or if you're importing it, import it into one of those text user text fields, or you could import it into the barcode, and then that might be useful for it to become a barcode for you later on if you ever get into that kind of thing. Next question, how can I import contacts? I think I just answered that. I didn't see that. But what you would do, well, if you give me just a second, I will get up my monitor preferences and I'll show you that. Flip this over here. Open display prefs. I have the menus on the wrong screen, which is why you can't see them. I'll put them up here. Okay, so now we can see, in addition to my desktop mess, the actual menus. Bring that down here. So I'm going to go into contacts, and now you can see at the top those menus. So if I go down to File, I can go to Import Records, File, and I could locate an Excel file that might have all of my things in it. And here is a Excel file. And I would be able to see, the name, address, phone number, zip code, all those fields on the left. And on the right side are the StudioSuite fields. And I can drag and drop these up and down to match however I need to get lined up with the fields on the left. One important tip here, and please read the manual about this. When I click import, if you're importing it from any source that's not previous StudioSuite, you want to make sure to perform auto enter options. This is critically important, and it is covered in the manual on how to import data, but make sure you do that because that's going to make sure that each record has required data for when it was created, who created it, an internal number, and things like that. So make sure this is checked when you're importing data. Another thing you can do under tools, under special, is import from vCard. So from say address book, you could export a whole bunch of vCards into one big vCard. You can import that. And then if you have the address book plugin, I don't even know the price on it. You could pull from address book. This is going to pull them all in. And then you can send either all of your things from Student Suite or just a single one to address book. Or you can clear them out of address book. Or you can pull from Outlook. And the Outlook one is one way. We didn't have time to get it to work two way. So it's just like a one-time ingest. Okay, so that's importing. Can you hit the library hard disk subtab? Good, thank you for pointing that out. In equipment. So some of your equipment is a library, is a hard drive. And you probably are potentially using some of that for your content. And so if this was a hard drive, actually, I'm just make a new one very quickly. Let's call whatever brand, Lacey. I'm going to call this a hard drive. So now I've got a hard drive, and I'm going to say that this is a library hard disk. And what this is going to do is make this hard drive available in the StuSuite library module as a container for content. So I could, let's say it's a 5 gig. Wait, showing my age here. How many gigs might it be? It might be 100 gigs. No, it might be 500 gigs. Can't keep track. 500 gigs. Last striped. So this is now this. I'm going to call it a 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to quickly jump into my library module. And this is another webinar, but we'll look at it anyway. Go to the detail, and here for this library record, I've got a drop-down list of all of my hard drives, including the one I just created. Well, it's the only one I've got, so I'm going to pick that. So basically what I'm doing is telling it that episode 3 from this project is on this Lacey hard drive, and I can even go to it. And now I am back in the equipment inventory, and I can see from the perspective of the Lacey hard drive all of the media items that are on that hard drive. Okay, back in equipment. That was, yes, figured that out. Add to try to add an existing project to the calendar. Tana, why don't you give a call into tech support? Not sure why that would be happening. Somebody's saying that when they add things to an existing project, they have a problem. Give a call into tech support. We'll try to help you with that. And someone also asked, is there a way to import from FileMaker into Studio Suite contacts? And I think I just covered that. So unless there are any other questions going on, better hurry up. I think that's going to be it for today. We will get this webinar posted to the website in about a week or so. And let me go back to my final slide here. In here. Boom. Hey, that's the wrong screen. Oh, I've got my screens reversed now. Well, you can just read it here. Our next webinar will be February 7th at 1 o'clock, how to customize StuSuite with Byron Martinez, who some of you may have talked to. He's our lead tech support guy and also helped me with a lot of the hardest parts of programming Studio Suite. And I'm pretty sure you're going to receive a survey at the end via email. If you do, please respond. The last couple, they haven't gone out for some reason, but if you get it, please respond. Thank you very much. We'd love to hear any feedback you've got on these webinars and things like that. Again, thank you, and enjoy Studio Suite. Goodbye.